Filthy Animals is an ecology podcast for adults. Episodes may contain strong language and graphic descriptions of natural phenomena. Wink. A more detailed list of content warnings is included in the episode description. Welcome to Filthy Animals, a sex, drugs, and ecology podcast where science educators talk about the unusual adult activities of the natural world that we believe you need to know about. Every month, we'll expose you to the latest research on all the filthy topics your high school science teacher was too embarrassed to talk about. I'm Rachel.
I'm Nicole.
And I'm Allan. And I'm going to be leading the topic here for this inaugural episode of Filthy Animals. This podcast, a little bit of a passion project for us. Not because we are sick people, but because we find the filthier side of nature fascinating.
It's true.
I mean, really, if you're gonna study nature, you gotta study the whole thing, even the bits that are like a little more unsavory or a little right?
Yeah. Also, who else is talking about it?
Right? I mean, there are scientists talking a lot about this.
And that one filmmaker.
Oh, yeah.
Remember what was her name? The girl who made
the shorts?
The bedbug shorts and stuff, where she would dress up like the animals and be like, ooh.
Oh, Isabella
stab
Rossellini?
me. Yes.
Yeah, that was wild. We need more of that, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
because
for sure.
this constitutes a huge part of biology and ecology. It's like, oh, well, we're just going to not, So we're going to talk about it.
Great.
Today. And I decided the perfect animal to begin with, talking about the role of sexuality in the animal world would be a close cousin of ours. I am talking about the bonobo. What do you guys know about bonobos?
I know enough about their proclivities that I'm afraid to say too much because I might spoil your episode.
No, that's fine. I hope you'll, if you have insights to give.
Okay.
Yes.
I've just heard a lot about their behaviors.
Their behaviors are pretty wild. Nicole, what do you know about bonobos?
Literally only the naughty things. So
Only the naughty things. Oh, yeah. That's fine.
They're fairly closely related to humans, more so than chimpanzees, right?
I believe they would be. I mean, genetically, they're about 98%, which is roughly the same as a chimpanzee. No, I mean, I don't know if you as a fraction of percent in terms of the genome. I don't know if they're slightly closer. They would have both diverged. That lineage would diverge from us not that long ago, 8 million years ago, is when that would have separated off from genus Homo.
Sure.
So pretty closely related. That's not a long time, evolutionarily speaking. So yeah, these are the two most closely related animals to us on Earth.
Yes.
It's kind of important to bring up chimpanzees in this episode also, just because these are two species that are in the same genus. Okay, genus Pan, the two species that constitute that particular genus, could not be more different in terms of their social structure, and a lot of that comes down to the sexual aspect of them.
And yet. We only hear people talking about chimpanzees and their relationship to humans, and I bet it's because of the pearl clutching that would come from comparing humanity to bonobos.
Yes, Rachel, that is an excellent point. We do seem to only hear about chimpanzees, and chimpanzees are pretty commonly used, today as the go-to for understanding early human ancestors. We kind of overlook the bonobo in a lot of ways.
On purpose.
On purpose, I think. Yeah, I mean, could well be. It also might have a little bit to do with the fact that bonobos are a little more reclusive. They were one of the last large mammals really described in Western science. They weren't formally described until until 1929.
Wow. Okay.
So like it's pretty recent. Like they're
Interesting.
but even in that time, there's been a ton of bonobo research because they're fascinating animals. One of the main source for this episode is going to come from a writer whose work I enjoy, who's Franz de Waal. He is a Dutch primatologist. He lives in the U.S. now, but he's written so many books about this. A lot of his books are really fun. Chimpanzee Politics, The Bonobo and the Atheist is one. Where it's about like looking at bonobos and like the evolutionary roots of empathy, right?
Oh.
And it's just he's done a lot of work on this.
Fine.
I'm going to primarily use him as my source because he, in the early 80s, did a bunch of research on captive bonobos at the San Diego Zoo, specifically on the role that sexuality plays in their lives. And I kid you not, this man filmed thousands of hours of bonobo sex tape.
Nice.
So he's got he's an authority on this. He's watched who knows how much of what these animals do.
How much did you watch in preparation for this episode?
We don't need to get into that. But no, so we're going to be talking about a lot about the writings of Franz de Waal, who's still an active author. He just released a book, I think, in the last couple of years. And we're also going to look at another sort of a literature review about the comparisons between chimpanzees and bonobos from 2022. Okay, but let's talk a little bit. Let's just distinguish our bonobo and chimpanzee just a little bit, in case because you're probably less familiar with a bonobo. Just to give some, yes. Rachel, do you have a question?
No.
Oh, okay. You just raised your hand. Okay.
I was going to be like, can I try telling the difference between them? And then I was like, no, you should not interrupt Allan on his podcast.
No,
So
absolutely
rude.
you should interrupt me. Rachel, tell me about the difference between a chimpanzee and a bonobo.
Chimpanzee,
Yeah.
sharp, mean, bullies, beat 'em up, teeth.
Yeah, okay.
Bonobos, soft, nice, orgies, handshakes with genitals,
Yeah. Okay.
kisses, love.
Oh, yeah. You know what? That was a fairly succinct, I think, description of the two species.
Pretty good.
Yeah, chimpanzees, larger, stronger, and definitely more aggressive, famously more aggressive, to an extent where it has a considerable community level impact on the animal. If you look at the sex ratios in the wild of bonobos versus chimpanzees, bonobo male to female is about 1-to-1. Chimpanzee male to female is closer to 1-to-2 because there is so much violent competition between males. They
Wow.
murder each other regularly
Ew.
to get the right to mate. They're a more male dominated species of primate in their social units, which is a sharp contrast from bonobos also. But yeah, it's really dangerous to be a chimpanzee. Even if you are the top dog, if you are the dominant male, basically a chimpanzee tyrant, the younger males will get together and overthrow you. So
Yeah.
you're just not safe living as a chimpanzee. You're
Yeah.
gonna get killed. Incredibly violent. There's also a lot of really fascinating intergroup aggression with chimpanzees, where and sometimes anthropologists like to look at that and be like, oh, see, warfare, pretty natural. Right? Yeah, it's what we do.
Look, men just like to bully each other. It's just how it is.
Yeah. But, there's a compelling case to be made that, bonobos, they don't really do things that way. So maybe that's also natural, and where do humans fall? Just as a an aside, humans don't have large muscles. We don't have sharp teeth. We don't have sharp claws. We do have big brains. and very pronounced sexual characteristics.
Yeah.
So one could, presume that perhaps we're better inclined towards, social and, other activities, perhaps than warfare.
Yes.
Lovers, not fighters, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just saying.
Seems right. Yeah.
Yes.
Should be anyways.
But that's the big difference between chimpanzees. Bonobos are smaller. Males are only about 90 pounds. Females only about 70. This animal lives, whereas, chimpanzees are a little more spread out in like open habitats. Bonobos tend to live in like a really thick, like dense, swampy forests in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. That is like where they're isolated to. It's a pretty rich environment that they live in, which also might it does play a role in some of these differences that we see between them and chimps. But yeah, they are the smaller, more darkly colored and much more sexual cousin of the chimpanzee. It's to put it really like the difference. Franz Waal puts it really succinctly in the way that he says like the key difference between them is, and that is that chimps solve sex issues with power, bonobos solve power issues with sex.
That sounds so much better.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the role of sexuality in bonobo society. I did mention that this came from like video studies of this, like in the early 80s is when this really started. This started taking off as a focus. He began looking into ways in which these animals reconcile with one another, right? Because anytime that animals have the potential for conflict, if they're going to continue existing, they need to have a method for reconciling, resolving that conflict as well. And he said in his writing that he was really not prepared for the mode that would take with bonobos. When they started observing these animals at the San Diego Zoo, they started noticing right away that males became erect very easily. In fact, they would become aroused basically any time the caretaker brought food. That was like just, off to the races. And that actually starting the feeding of these animals would basically initiate, they wouldn't just, get down to let's chow down real fast. It would be a 5 to 10 minute sort of sexual free-for-all before any eating started. This is just like a pre-meal ritual.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
They're so excited the food comes that they just have to bang it out with the
a little
entire
bit.
troop.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Well, it'll make sense when we talk about what is this actually accomplishing for them. It'll make sense in a little bit.
Okay.
But let's talk about the mechanics of how they are, I guess, getting after it, right? Because that is also important because it's very different in the primate world. Okay. Something that's observed among bonobos pretty commonly, and it should be mentioned that the sexual contacts that are happening between bonobos are all sorts of pairings, right? It's not just male-female. It's female-female. It's male-male. Okay. And it's kind of like across the age structure of the bonobo unit as well. The only sexual contacts they really avoid are those of very close family relations.
Okay.
So something unique that happens, and this is especially with female-female pairings, is you get face-to-face sex. Okay. I found one paper. The title of it was "Look at Me While We Have Sex." And it was that was the title of it. The subtitle was exploring eye contact among during copulation.
Nice.
And yeah, this is something that is like obviously it's not seen very frequently in the primate world. In the animal world, it's like animals locking in, looking at each other while they're while they're boning it up. So it's that's pretty unique. Has a very important role for them in terms of like an exchange of like this is a social activity, right? It's also interesting to note that like the position of a bonobo's vulva is actually more forward like placed to enable this face-to-face contact. So it's like specifically adapted to be able to like look at each other while they are rubbing genitals.
Nice.
Amazing.
That's amazing.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
Good for them.
It's like it's important. It is important for them. This kind of especially with the females because, and we'll talk a little bit about how these female relationships tend to be the basis of bonobo society. They are, as opposed to the intensely patriarchal chimpanzee, the bonobo is like far more of a matriarchal social unit. And these this genital contact, this sexual encounter between females is like the core of bonobo society.
Wow.
Like, I'm serious. The term for this is GG rubbing, genital rubbing. Okay. It is also known as the hoka hoka. And this is when you have the genital swellings of these animals, and they will sort of like they will look at each other. Sometimes one like female will pin down the other, and they'll just sort of like rub it up. Nice. Okay.
Hoka hoka.
Just grinding on each other for a little bit. It's very important. It's really it. It's also it should be noted that like that genital swelling that you see, obviously if you picture a chimpanzee, you've seen it at the zoo, you're probably like, whoa, there's something going on with that chimpanzee, because like they do have a pronounced genital swelling when they are ready to mate. It's genuinely like a basketball between their legs. Like it's wild. But that genital swelling in bonobos is present for a lot longer than it is in like other primates. Other primates, it tends to be kind of more synced up with ovulation and estrus, right? Not so for chimpanzees. Females are swollen about 50. For bonobos, females are swollen about 50% of the time in bonobos.
Wow.
Compared with 5% of the time in chimps.
Okay.
Sounds exhausting.
Yeah, right?
They're just much, much hornier. I don't know what to tell you.
And they're like always ready to go, basically. Because it's not like a response. It's not like a erectile tissue in that sense. It's not controlled by their own like stimulation, right?
Yeah, no, it's like hormonally driven.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not like becoming like, erect. Like you can influence like I'm gonna swell my genitals right now.
I'm just feeling it right now.
Yeah.
It's like predetermined lengths of time.
Yeah.
In their body's cycles.
Yes. Yeah. Correct. Yeah. And so this genital rubbing is like really essential. It's an integrated like sexual and social interaction. Okay. For bonobos in general, these two things are completely inseparable. Rachel, you said like, like there's kissing, there is, like genital contact. There's various like, we're just like, orgies and hand jobs all over the place. This is just what they do. Okay.
Is there actually kissing? Because I was kind of joking about that.
No, there is.
Oh
yeah,
my
there is
God.
like deep tongue kissing is pretty common.
Oh wow.
And like there's
Sick.
there's like
That's
the reason for that it's like, why is kissing a behavior in general?
Yeah.
It's believed that there's like, okay, it's not just like not just like an intimacy thing, but it's like a information exchange, like it's like, oh, we're sort of tasting each other's mouths. We're getting to know, like,
Sorry.
I know it's
Made
weird
me
to think about,
cringe a little.
but it's like, oh, we're tasting each other, like, we're giving each other information about like food and that sort of thing. And,
Oh, ew. Oh, God.
hold on.
Prairie dogs do it too. Lots of animals do it.
Yeah, it's just it's an information exchange, right? But it also helps build those social bonds.
Mm-hmm.
So, general rubbing among females is hugely important. We'll talk about some of the things this accomplishes in a second. The males are also very engaged with one another in sexual activity. Male bonobos, they play, more of the secondary role in the social unit. They tend to stay as a part of like the group they're born into, whereas, females like eventually leave and migrate elsewhere. So the males all like they stay together with their like birth group, and they are with each other the entire time.
That's very much like a gender reverse of a lot of other animals.
Yeah, but for both chimpanzees and bonobos, that's the way it is. It's like the
really?
females leave and have to be
Oh.
assimilated into a new group.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the males are, they have their own little like social structure, but they and they're not like completely immune from the jealousy and the competition that you would see with chimpanzees. Mm-hmm. They do get after each other. They do fight it with one another, but they also reconcile afterwards. So like if, it was observed that like, if a male would like squabble with another male over a female, the males would eventually like come back together, and then they would be like, I'm sorry about that. We got a little out of control.
Uh-huh.
Let me rub my scrotum on your buttocks for a little bit.
Yeah. Fair.
And that's that's what they do. That's what they do.
That's so sweet.
Yeah.
Sorry, bro. Hang on. Let's just.
Yeah. They also would engage in fencing, which is what it sounds like.
Like nudibranchs.
Yeah, just like penile fencing, like hanging from branches and just kind of poking it out a little bit with each other.
Hanging from branches?
Sometimes,
That's
yeah.
impressive.
Yeah, well, I mean they're apes.
Yeah.
They're built for this.
Not what I was expecting.
They're a lot more arboreal than chimpanzees, so they can handle that.
They can penis fence from the trees.
Yes.
Impressive.
And so yeah, there's it's
What an image.
yeah, it is an image, but it's important, important for those that male competition. So these studies, right? These are the activities that he sort of like observed, right? In addition to the things already mentioned, there would also be, you'd get sporadic, brief, like copulation, like penetrative sex. There'd be oral sex, genital massage, and just also, like we mentioned, lots of kissing. Like these are just really horny animals. It's wild. But these sort of studies were the first evidence that these animals are using sexual behavior as a mechanism, right? It's not just, it's partially for pleasure, obviously.
Well, yeah.
But it is also like this is a mechanism that's built into this animal, and it's like life history to avoid the kind of aggression that other primates might be prone to, right? Yes. So let's talk about some of the things that you can accomplish as a bonobo with erotic contact. Okay. The first thing we talked about was obviously like conflict resolution, right? The sociosexual contacts between these bonobos were often to repair social relationships, between themselves and former opponents.
Former opponents.
Yeah. But also to like reduce distress. Okay. So like consoling each other. Mm-hmm. There was one example mentioned by Franz de Waal of a young male named Kako, who was K-A-K-O.
Okay, my bad.
they gave them like reasonable names. This animal was this male was crossing a branch ran into an older, more dominant female, got knocked off the branch by the female.
Oh.
Like the female is not having it. I was like, what are you doing, dude? Like this little guy is just like coming up over here. She smacked him off the branch. She then tried to gnaw at his fingers to loosen his grip on the branch. But Kako pleaded with her, started making like these like little pathetic yelps. And so Leslie, the female, bent down and rubbed her vulva on his shoulder.
Nice.
And they both calmed down. They were they were like, they were both reassured by this. They were like, oh, you know what? This is getting a little out of hand. Like, let's just calm down. And they both proceeded, without any additional violence. That like potentially violent encounter was prevented by the simple act of rubbing your junk on someone's shoulder.
That is so. It's like like it's not an uncommon gesture to put your hand on someone's shoulder as a.
Yeah.
But so it's like that.
It's like that.
But
it's very different.
for genitals.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's the same. It's in the same spirit.
Are we sure?
It certainly seems to be. But it is it accomplished the same thing in a very different, very odd way.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's that like conflict resolution is a huge part of it. And this also comes into this sort of diffusing tensions also happens on the this diffusion of tension happens on the group level as well. Generally speaking, the sexual contact of bonobos is like the social grease of their society, right? It's like just sort of like helps everything move along a little more easily. Reduces tension and promotes a peaceful coexistence between unrelated group members. So it's also just like a getting to know you. Okay. They would actually find that the GG rubbing, the hoka hoka, the eye contact, the level of eye contact is more intense between females that are less familiar with each other. Okay, so it's not an intimacy thing. It is very much like I'm getting to know you. Like we're locking in. We're kind of building this bond here. Like that was something that particular study, like that was the main takeaway of that study. Like it is related to building familiarity and building bonds. And yeah, sex diverts your attentions, obviously, and diffuses potential problems.
Whoa.
Yes. Another thing that was consistent with this was when like unrelated groups of bonobos find the same food source. Like if they meet at the same fig tree, there's going to be a lot of sex happening.
Oh. Just
to establish like, okay, let's approach this problem the right way. Let's just, let's all get together. Let's jerk each other off a little bit. And then we'll think about the food. Okay. Let's get in the right headspace to deal with this.
Okay.
Like, we don't know how many figs are in this fig tree. Okay. Let's have sex first. Okay. That's like, and then they can more calmly, begin that, there is a less intense competition for that resource now, that they've done this. So the diffusion of tension is really, really important for a really, really important purpose of this sexual activity.
This really reestablishes the baseline for like the concept of lovers, not fighters.
Yeah.
The bar has moved for what that means.
Yeah, there's definitely an extreme here that's happening. Yeah. Like, this is definitely not like a good I wouldn't endorse this as a model for human behavior
Oh, God,
by
no.
any means.
No, if anybody puts their vulva on my shoulder to calm me down, I'm punching them.
Yeah, that's a crime, I think. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so. Yeah.
Have there been any studies of like if they don't engage in, all this flirting and genitals and all that good stuff before they come to a resource, like is there more fighting, or do they pretty much always do this before they interact?
It is more common for them both in captivity and in the wild to like engage in these behaviors before. Now there is that's not to say there is like no fighting between bonobos, because there is, and there is like, especially with males, there is occasionally like lethal or violent encounters. But those are notably less common. But it's not impossible. But so like these that is exactly, like you're saying, like that is exactly the role of this type of sexual contact, is to prevent that aggression, or at least that's what the evidence, that is the hypothesis, that's why they do all this, is to avoid ending up with half of the male population dead. Because they are like a pretty slow to reproduce species. They will like bonobos breed. They will have their young. Their baby will be with them, like nursing and clinging to them for like 5 or 6 years.
Oh, wow.
And then, that animal won't reproduce. That animal won't give birth for the first time until they're like 13 or 14.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
So this is a pretty slow, like, they're not cranking out lots of bonobos.
That's fascinating because they have so much sex.
That should tell you how much of this is like non-reproductive, right?
Yeah.
Like the amount of like the degree of sexual contact they're having and yet not reproducing that much.
How do you know how that mechanically happens? Is it because they're just not ovulating, or they can't tell when they're ovulating because they're always aroused?
I think a lot of it has to do with like the duration of, like, they're not necessarily having like, they're not like mating to completion with a lot of these activities, so yeah, it's not like they are just like, it's not like they're having full sex, with one another. It's sometimes it's only just like a few seconds of like, blah. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah. Just, of slapping them together.
One final question.
Yes, of course.
To save everyone's search history, we talked a lot about penis fencing and all this stuff. How long are their penises?
Oh God, I actually didn't look that up. I should. I should look that up.
Your search history's already shot. You might as well.
You're right.
Yeah.
There's some really questionable things in my search history now. No, I need to look that up. They're I would say honestly probably not very.
It's probably like a thumb.
Yeah, because like as a proportion of their like body size, other primates do not have like as long of a penis as a human would.
Yeah.
Right. So and they're smaller. They're 90 pounds. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna assume that they have like a relatively small penis.
Yeah.
But I have to look this up. All right. Well, there's some bonobo balls for you.
Nice.
Were they big?
They're actually they're pretty pendulous. Like that's a significant hang there. According to Google, this is from The Guardian. The erect bonobo penis comes in at around 8 centimeters. So it's about 2.5 to an inch. So yeah, that's about a thumb. Right. That would be what? Math. That's about a scooch over 3 inches. So yeah, that's what we're looking at for the average bonobo penis.
Amazing.
That's also the same for chimpanzees.
Oh.
And the comparing that with gorillas, the average gorilla penis is 3 centimeters long. That's 1.25 inches.
Wild.
Yeah.
Okay.
Look, if it's not a characteristic that was like selected for, it's like then why would they become like, extremely large?
I guess. Well, never mind. We don't need to get into that.
Well, yeah, and who knows? But like that's comparing that with the average human penis, around 13 centimeters. Okay, so if you need to like feel superior to a gorilla today, then there you go, dear
Cool.
listener. All right. It is like clear that humans have like much more exaggerated sexual characteristics than other primates. Obviously, because these are things that are like selected for if they're found attractive.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. You're mocking my hand gestures. I'm just all right.
No, I'm not mocking.
Okay. All right. Thank you for taking us down that rabbit hole, Nicole.
Yeah. Like I said, I just want to save everyone else's surgery.
There you go. All right.
Thank you. Wait, where's the pictures?
We'll get to pictures later. Okay. We talked about conflict. We talked about reconciliation. We talked about food sharing. That is why they were becoming so aroused around feeding time, is because like it is built in to the way they approach food resources. Right?
It's like, oh man, we better not fight over this. Let's all just get clear heads.
And like, yes, like eating food probably hits the brain, like the same parts of the brain that do sexual arousal in
Especially
some
chocolate.
way. Especially, yeah, there you go. Like there's,
For humans.
Yeah, right.
Fascinating.
It's true.
Yeah, no, there's like, like aphrodisiac foods, right? That like sort of engage those parts of your brain. But yes, that's why they do that. The last thing I guess I wanted to mention in terms of roles that these sexual contacts play would be in creating like,
Babies.
well, yeah, there is that.
Oh, okay.
And there is also pleasure, but also like creating like profitable relationships, right? So not just like building those social bonds, but creating relationships where both parties are getting something out of it, right? Sort of using sex in a more transactional way, right? They one of the things they studied were that like when female bonobos are like receptive when they are when they're like swollen, right? They will like very confidently approach male bonobos and sort of like be able to come away with sort of some of the things that they've taken, like some of the like the whether it's like branches or leaves or food or whatever that they have. Female bonobos are going to like when they're swollen to more confidently come in and engage in sexual activity, and then they'll like get some of what that male bonobo might have. Okay. And the male bonobo is like, yeah, awesome. Like done deal. That happens to a less degree, that happens less when they are not in that swollen state, right? So they're less, I guess, able to obtain the favors of a male. And this happens a lot with like, I guess, low status females because they're not like automatically dominant. There's like very much an age structure with bonobos, and like the older females tend to be more dominant. If you want to get into a bonobo group, you need to hook up with that older female if you're a female and like establish that bond. The younger females might not be able to automatically sort of dominate certain males within the group, especially if they're related to that dominant female. Like the social structure gets very complicated,
right?
But that's when they're able to sort of use sexual favors to sort of, profit, I guess is the way it would be, as you could express it. Like
climb the social ladder.
The social ladder, get, and actually like obtain resources and get things. So that is like another function of the sexual behavior. It becomes a little bit transactional in certain points. This happens both in captivity and the wild. As I said, like a lot of these things, I have like specific examples written down, but we don't need to get into those.
We don't?
Well, okay. Like at the Wamba Reserve in Congo, a young female was observed approaching a male who was eating sugarcane. They copulated in short order, upon where she left with one of the two canes held by him.
Hey.
Nice. All
And it wasn't
right.
like devious and sneaky. Like he just was like, "Here, take this,
Yeah. It was like,
sweetie."
it was like, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, you want some of the sugar cane? Yeah, cool. All right. See you later.
Okay.
Yeah. Like it's, again, it's like, it is, like I said, mutually profitable.
Sure.
Okay. They're both getting something out of it.
For sure.
Yeah. So that's, all very fascinating stuff. Yes. So bonobos could not exist the way that they do without, they could not curtail this sexual interaction because it is directly interchangeable with like basic social interactions for them, right? It is
Right.
like they could not stop doing any of this and still be existing in the same way. This is all like a very good example of, to my mind, that sex is not just a purely a purely functional procreative activity, right? In the animal kingdom. That feels like it should go without saying,
And yet.
the role that sex plays in human lives is extremely complicated and, complex.
Yeah.
It's the same with animals, which is what we're going to be talking about a lot on this podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, they don't, they engage in all sorts of sexual activity for all sorts of reasons. And it is really like essential to their survival, which I think is fascinating. One more, I guess, note on, this is a little bit of a tangent, but a note on sexual pleasure in animals that I came across while researching this. From Franz de Waal referenced a study from 1974 with stump-tailed macaques as being some of the first evidence that non-human primates were experiencing orgasms, which is like, okay, like, come on, like, obviously they are, right? But I was like, that's all he said there was like, oh, this study, that's how they know. And so obviously I was like, okay, what does that study entail?
Yeah.
Like how do you know? How are you measuring, that an animal is experiencing an orgasm? Because, like in animal husbandry, frequently, sometimes, you facilitate that as a, for whatever reason, if you're breeding animals. Anyway, I did find this study. This study was 1974 by Suzanne Chevalier-Skolnikoff, PhD.
Whoa.
And she noted that orgasms were observed in female stump-tailed macaques during homosexual interactions. They were easily distinguished by all of the features enumerated above as characterizing masculine orgasms. So this was done by observation. They characterize a masculine orgasm by body rigidity, followed by body spasms, and characteristic facial expressions and vocalizations.
Nice.
So that's how they were kind of reading into
macaques.
that. Like, oh, yeah, that is what's happening there.
Man, that guy really left out some important details. Like, number
Yeah.
one, it's female orgasms. Number two, it's very homosexual. Number three, here's like all the ways that we measured it or whatever.
Yes. Yeah, right. It's interesting. And they did also note that it's not just during homosexual interactions, female. They were also appearing to experience orgasm during heterosexual interactions.
Nice.
So
Good for them.
way to go, stump-tailed macaques. Macaques in general also might be an interesting topic to get into because, again, we go down rabbit holes with these podcasts.
Oh, yeah.
I did find a paper published in 2002 titled, "Do Monkeys Use Sex Toys? Evidence of Stone Tool-Assisted Masturbation in Free-Ranging Long-Tailed Macaques." So there's a lot of,
Nice.
it's a rich area.
Wow.
Primates, just in general, fascinating.
I've heard stories of orangutan keepers seeing some stuff and definitely using toys.
Yeah, I mean, why not, right? Like, yeah. That's like, I would, and I wonder what the implication for this is, into like human evolution, where it's like tool use among apes is fairly a recent development, right? Like they use, they're using stone tools for, breaking nuts and fishing for termites and, dipping honey out of things, right? it was like it's just interesting that it would be such an immediate evolutionary development in tool use to be like, okay, but also sex toys.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that speaks to the essential nature of these animals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, birds will rub one out on a branch, so
Yeah.
it's really a short leap. If you can use
You know?
tools, why not use them for that purpose?
I mean, why not? Like
Yeah.
it's important, right? You do need to enjoy being alive, right?
Especially if you're in a zoo setting. Like, maybe it's boring in there a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
Provide your own enrichment.
That's true. Yeah.
Half the dancing bird videos they're just getting off.
Okay, if their horniness levels are driven by hormones, do they use like hormonal birth control on captive bonobos? And does that interfere with their social interactions?
That's a great question. I think maybe I don't know if they do because their reproductive rates are so low.
Oh, that's
I
a
don't
good
know if
point.
they feel the need to control that. Like I don't know. I didn't look so much into like the actual like husbandry aspect of it.
Yeah.
I imagine that they do, only because it's so widespread in other animals in captivity.
To use birth control, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that would make sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And like there's always like SSPs and like species protection.
Survival plans.
Yes, I'll say that. The P is not the second letter. But yeah, there's all these, plans and planning that go into at least like AZA zoos and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, you're a lot more familiar with the zoo world than I would be. And I mean that makes complete sense that you can't just have zoo animals breeding indefinitely.
Yeah.
That does not that's
But
not
maybe-
a sustainable model.
Maybe bonobos, since they do reproduce so slowly, like maybe they're in high demand just because they are charismatic species, so it doesn't really matter. I don't know.
Yeah, that's an interesting aspect. If you listen to this and you are a primate keeper, please tell us what you know about.
Yeah. Are your bonobos
about,
on birth control?
Yeah, tell us about your bonobos. We want to hear about them. Yes. Did you know that there was one study where they put a fake termite mound filled with honey in a bonobo enclosure and in a chimpanzee enclosure in Stuttgart?
Oh.
And what happened with the chimpanzee enclosure is that the male chimpanzees would take it over and no females would get to feed until they were like, I've had enough honey, I think.
Oh.
Have at it, ladies. With bonobos, the males would approach it, okay, and then when they saw the female bonded group, because this like the female group bond is strong, when they saw the females roll up, they were like, oh shit. And then they would abandon the hive, like they would abandon the termite mound so the females could have it.
Oh.
And if they tried to like sneak back in there, the females would be like, fuck out of here. Just
With their
chase them off.
genitals or with their
No, they would like
palms?
chase them off.
Oh, okay.
Like the females would band together and chase the males off. Yeah, it's just kind of interesting. I don't know.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's just a very different, like two extremely closely related species, completely different social structure.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Fascinating.
Well,
Allan, what a great first episode for this podcast. I am delighted to know so much more about bonobos. Nicole, did this change your opinion about primates at all?
No.
all right.
Okay.
Well, that's. I'll get you someday.
Okay.
We'll get you there. I feel like we're making progress. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
There's got to be some primate that's gonna just
Yeah.
crack her stone cold heart.
Yeah, there's a primate-shaped hole somewhere in there,
Yeah.
and we're going to find the right little peg to fit in it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Nah. And they're cool. I'm not saying they're not cool, but
Well, thanks for listening to this episode of Filthy Animals. This podcast is produced by Grassland Groupies, dedicated to spreading scientific literacy in the interest of preserving our favorite natural resources on this filthy planet. Send us fan mail at 4925 South Broadway, number 69, Wichita, Kansas 67216. Our other social media and contact info is in the notes. And to finish off this episode, and thank you for listening to the credits, we've got a little wholesome brain bleach for you. Nicole, give us some wholesome brain bleach.
Give us a wholesome animal fact. Can be
Yeah.
anything.
why me?
Because,
So we're putting
it's
you on
fun.
the spot.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
You don't know. Give me a second. I'll come up with something.
I assumed it would be about the animal that we talked
Yeah,
about.
that would probably make sense. Hold on.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just
That's good.
assumed. Yeah.
Oh, I thought if anybody learned anything interesting and nice this week that they learned. Not that this wasn't nice. This was very nice, honestly.
Oh, here's a wholesome bonobo fact for you.
Thank you.
Did you know that when bonobos give birth, a 2018 study of bonobo births noted that as in humans, birth in bonobos was a social event
Oh.
where female attendants provided protection and support.
Oh.
Yeah,
Kind of a little
Aw.
doula.
yeah, just a little bit of midwifery among bonobos. Again, speaking to that strong, wholesome social bond.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
That's very sweet.
Yeah, it's nice.
Thanks, Allan.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Do, 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 do.